Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to debunk the Johnny Harris video titled, How the US Stole Mexico. Johnny Harris is known to post anti-American and pro-communism videos on YouTube, so this will be a good one.
Back when the British Empire was colonizing all of this land, they drew a line. The line went right along this little mountain range, and it was meant as a boundary. Back in London, they were saying that no English settler was allowed to settle west of this line. The British Empire did this because they were worried that if settlers started to expand into the west, they would bring the British Empire into a war with native populations. They also didn't want to unnecessarily piss off France, who also had land in the west. So they told their settlers to settle, but not past this line. And then the settlers completely ignored it.
Johnny points out that the colonizers ignored command from the British, and he's right. That was the entire point of the colonizers coming here. The United States was formed as an independent nation to separate from the large powers overseas.
The northern part of Mexico was called Texas, or Texas, and it was populated mainly with native groups, so it had nothing to do with the US or Mexico. They had just been living there for centuries. So Mexico's looking at this fairly new, sparsely populated part of their country and thinking, what do we do with all this land? They want to incentivize people to go and settle in this land, so it would potentially be more economically productive.
So they plan to take over the area through mass slaughter, like you mentioned earlier.
They started to rent huge swaths of land. They wanted to incentivize people to go and settle in this land so it would potentially be more economically productive for the country of Mexico. So they made a plan. They started to rent huge swaths of land to American settlers so that they would come in and settle the land. And in return, these American settlers would recruit more settlers to come in and settle the land, again, all with the hope that it would benefit Mexico's economy eventually.
So instead of using the people of their own nation to take over the region, Mexico tries to expand its country and economy on the backs of the American people.
It did exactly the opposite. American settlers fled into Texas onto this newly rented land, just as the Mexican government hoped for. But with them, they brought slaves, which was totally illegal in Mexico at the time.
Slavery was not illegal in Mexico at the time. Slavery was legal in Mexico until 1829.
Mexico soon realized that this plan completely backfired, and that the Americans that had rented land from them were now not interested in having Mexico as their government. So Mexico sends in the military to remind the settlers that they're still in Mexico, and that they're technically renting this land from Mexico.
Well, this eventually escalated, and they started to fight all-out battles, and the American settlers lost.
How do you rent land out and take it back? Hey, build your civilization, and in 10 years we're going to take your civilization away if you don't do what we say. This is the same imperialism that colonizers, settlers, and natives were trying to escape from in the Old World. Mexico refused to leave any survivors and slaughtered every American there.
The big battle here was called the Battle of the Alamo. This guy, Davy Crockett, who was like the symbol of westward expansion, died in this battle. And this loss spurred even more settlers to come to Texas and join the next fight against Mexico, which the American settlers won. And with that, they declared a new nation, independent of Mexico, the Republic of Texas. And now the map looks like this: a newly declared country of American settlers in between Mexico and the United States.
But not everyone actually agreed that the map looked like this.
While Mexico conceded that they lost the war, they disputed this map, saying that the border of the new Republic of Texas was actually here, and that all of this was still Mexico.
You lost the war. How are you still trying to dictate which land is yours and isn't?
So now you have a big land dispute between Mexico and the Republic of Texas. Well, soon it's 1845 and Texas becomes the 28th state of the United States. And yet this land is still disputed. But now it's a land dispute between the United States of America and Mexico.
Of this guy, President James K. Polk.
James Polk wins the presidency and comes into office with a list of 4 big things he wants to do. It's his big wish list. At the top of this wish list is Polk's desire to capture this very specific part of Mexico, which is called California. He first tried to buy California from Mexico for $25 million. Mexico flat out said no. So, remember this big old swath of disputed territory that the US inherited when they admitted Texas into the Union? James Polk was pissed off that Mexico didn't take his offer to buy California. So he sends a small group of troops into this disputed territory and has them march right up to here. right across from the river that separates what everyone agrees is Mexico. So the Mexican army is sent to respond to what looks like an oncoming attack from the United States. Small group of 80 Americans, killing 11 of them and capturing the rest. They easily won since they were outnumbered by like a magnitude of like 20. But this is exactly what Polk needed to get his wish list going.
So some Americans went to the land that they declared was theirs once they won the war, and Mexico sent an entire army to slaughter these people. That's a tragic event, and now you're claiming it's part of the president's plan. Polk tried to peacefully hash things out by compensating Mexico for the land when they did not have to. Polk then allows some Americans to go to their land and you slaughter these people. You were not forced to send an army at these people.
After this battle, Polk goes to Congress and reports that the Mexicans have, quote, invaded our territory and shed American blood upon American soil. Even though this wasn't necessarily American soil, it was disputed territory that most people thought was rightfully Mexico. But
who is most people? Most people do not know this conflict is going on.
It didn't matter. The death of Americans was enough to rally Congress around declaring war with Mexico. The US easily won this war, and they did it pretty quickly. Remember that the taking over of Texas was originally a bunch of settlers who band together, made a militia, fought Mexico on their own, and declared the Republic of Texas. Not super great, but at least it wasn't like a government leader sending his soldiers in that he knows are going to lose to provoke another country to kill those soldiers so that he can use democratic processes and institutions to make war, all so that he can take over land from that country.
Mexico did not have to kill those men. The Americans did not fire at them. This is an insane narrative. The fact of the matter is, Mexico stole that land from slaughtering natives and could not even keep up with all the land they had. The United States, however, is a rapid expanding immigration-friendly country that has way better use for the land area than Mexico, who was trying to build the area on the backs of Americans. Polk sees this and promises in his campaign to address this issue. To avoid war, he chooses peace and offers to just buy the land from Mexico, and Mexico declines, instead choosing to be imperialist.
Polk really wanted California. Jeez.
There were critics of this at the time, one of whom was this guy, who said that letting Polk force the country into war with Mexico was, quote, allowing him to make...
Yeah, this is the same guy who, when the South declared itself not a part of the United States, he forcibly took it over.
Group of 6... James K. Polk. So anyway, the U.S. easily wins the war. They pay Mexico $15 million, and Mexico gave up all of this. As a part of this loss, Mexico also conceded all of this disputed territory, making it officially a part of the U.S. state of Texas. The U.S. had grown significantly in just a couple of years, and Polk got his California. The U.S. could have taken more land. Some American lawmakers at the time wanted to take all of Mexico, and militarily, they likely could have done this. But they only took this part of Mexico because it was the most sparsely populated, mainly by Native Americans. One senator at the time, who happened to be pro-slavery, argued on the Senate floor against...
Let's search for land where...
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to take over sparsely populated land rather than forcing your country on an entirely different race of people.
We can exterminate the natives and settle white people, instead of, let's take land where there's already big populations that are non-white people that we would have to bring into our country.
Checked off California from his list. And just the next month, Oregon was organized into a territory after working out a deal with the British. Polk had exterminated anyone in his way, and now he had a coast-to-coast country. A few years later, they bought this little piece of land from Mexico. And this completed the southern border that we know today.
Notice how peaceful that exchange was when you're not trying to enforce your imperialism over everybody.
One that was forged first from a rebellion of American settlers, then a war at the pleasure of James K. Polk, and then finally that little purchase there at the end.
So the US stole Mexico in the 1800s, partly because they opened their borders to Americans to let them in to work their land, which is just a very strange full circle irony, especially because today you go to the US-Mexico border and we do everything to make it clear that this side of that wall is the US, when just a few years ago it was all Mexico. I wish, like the Hawaii video, I had some high note to end on here, but I don't, so see ya.
No, the United States won Mexico after a failed extortion attempt by Mexico at the expense of the American people. At least we do not slaughter Mexicans. The people working at the border are doing the best they can, and we are constantly expanding on that progress. And if you cannot end on a high note, I will. Today, millions of Mexicans legally make their way into the United States and become great citizens. Our Latin population is projected to become the highest percentage in the country by 2050. See you next time.